8 days after Israel began striking the head of the axis of evil in the Middle East, the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps and the nuclear weapons program that they always said they never had and would never give up, the United States President Donald Trump ordered the United States Air Force and the Navy to unleash firepower only they could unleash. This has already resulted in the destruction of key parts of that nuclear program, and although some might say it can still be rebuilt, I don't think that's true. In any case, Iran's ability to harm me and my family, my friends, and the countrymen of Israel has now been dealt a devastating setback. President Donald Trump announced that the strikes in a social media post saying a full load of bombs was dropped. And then, later he added simply that Fordo is gone. He added, instead of taking the sensible route and announcing that they will surrender, the Ayatollah regime responded by launching a barrage of missiles at Israel and declaring on social media, now the war begins. And shortly after this social media exchange, President Donald Trump made a brief statement from the White House with his senior advisors, including Vice President J.D. Vance, standing behind him, in which he declared, this is an opening that the world hasn't seen in decades. No military in the world could have done what we've done. He added, thank you, Netanyahu. We worked as a team. If Iran does not stop, a greater tragedy awaits. And shortly thereafter, official statements by the Pentagon confirmed that 6 JBU-57 massive ordnance penetration bombs were dropped on Fordo, and 2 additional bombs on the facility at Natanz. In addition, a barrage of 30 submarine-launched Tomahawk cruise missiles were also fired at Natanz and the nuclear facility at Isfahan, causing massive damage to both sides. An initial bomb damage assessment report included that the statements that Iran's nuclear ambitions are officially dead. Another statement added that all United States forces are currently out of danger, but the defense establishment is monitoring the possibility of an Iranian response. And guys, once again, we have a lot to talk about today, so let's dive into the details. I'm Yair Pinto, and this is your Boots on the Ground report that gathers for you the most detailed truth about what is happening in Israel and the Middle East. But before we continue, we're just wanting to let you know that this battle is about the truth. So make sure to subscribe and stay updated on all of our Boots on the Ground reports. I can't say this more clearly, people. The games are over. The United States of America, the most powerful country in human history, has thrown the full weight of its power against the great bully in the Middle East, Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps, and the world is a better, safer, and more secure place because of it. The United States attacked the Iranian regime's most secure nuclear facility at Fordo earlier on Sunday morning, despite President Trump's statement just a couple of days ago that he would make his decision about whether to attack or not within 2 weeks. A lot of people thought that he meant that nothing would happen for at least 2 weeks, but that was not what he said. He said within 2 weeks, and that meant it could happen at any moment. People who heard what they wanted to hear have no one but themselves to blame for being surprised. In any case, probably within the next 24 hours or less, we'll know for sure if the Iranian nuclear program has truly evaporated. But in a certain sense, the extent of the damage doesn't really matter. What matters is that the President of the United States decided to put an end to Iran's deadly game, and the whole world must now take note, including America's friends, their enemies, and everybody in between. On that note, it's important to point out that President Trump thanked Israel, thanked the IDF, and Netanyahu personally for assisting in the planning of this operation. This is the beginning of a process of rebuilding the image of a superpower that will stand on its principles and defend its interests and those of its allies. To paraphrase Winston Churchill, this isn't the end of the problems that Iran poses to the world, but it is definitely the end of the beginning. Israel's Prime Minister, Mr. Benjamin Netanyahu, said after the American attack on Iran that he has always believed in peace through strength, but that first comes strength, then comes peace. In further elaborations, the Prime Minister released 2 statements in Hebrew and English, thanking President Trump and the United States, who acted with full force and praised the bold decision that will change history. He added, I promised that Iran's nuclear facilities would be destroyed one way or the other. That promise has been fulfilled. In my humble opinion, the Ayatollah regime should know when it's time to quit, but apparently they don't agree. Iran's foreign ministry issued a statement saying that the United States started a dangerous war, and a channel affiliated with the Revolutionary Guards threatened to destroy American bases in the region, saying they will become ashes. Of course, the United States military bases in Iraq, in Syria, and elsewhere in the region have been preparing for this moment for a long time, and now they're on maximum alert, preparing for Iran's retaliation. Candidly, I think they would be very foolish to retaliate by hitting United States bases, and I'm not the only one that thinks this. I believe that they will focus their attacks on Israel. And President Donald Trump said in a special statement, Iran must surrender. For the sake of the long-suffering Iranian people, I hope that the regime does surrender, because if they try to fight the Americans now, they will only be inviting further death and destruction on Iran. They cannot win, but there is still a way for them to avoid losing everything. On that note, it is also important for me to report that Israel is not done hitting the Ayatollah regime in Iran, destroying more of their ballistic missile launchers and other strategic weapons, but not before Iran launched a barrage of about 30 missiles at Israeli cities, wounding almost 100 people and causing enormous physical damage. So guys, please pray for the Israeli civilians and the rescue teams that are still working to dig survivors out of the rubble and the destroyed buildings, even as we're recording this video here. Things are even worse in Iran, where the IDF launched another wave of strikes this morning and is well on its way to delivering a humiliating strategic defeat to the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps that will be remembered for years to come. It launched another wave of strikes this morning and is well on its way to delivering a humiliating strategic defeat to the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps that will be remembered for years to come. It's actually not too early to start adding up some statistics from this campaign, so let's take a look at that. Iran launched 1,100 UAVs so far in this war. Of these, 300 were intercepted by the Air Force, 200 were intercepted in the skies over Syria, and 100 penetrated Israeli territory but were shot down. It's important to remember and thank the Jordanian Air Force, which has also shut down a number of drones that Iran fired at us, saying that they would not allow their airspace to be used by either side. So, thanks to Jordan for that. It didn't hurt Israel's efforts to strike Iran, but it closed a very important effort and path for them to attack us. And speaking of which, around 500 ballistic missiles were fired at Israel by Iran, and around 50 or 10% managed to penetrate the air defensive systems and impact in Israeli cities. That last part is important to remember because last October, Iran's barrage of missiles targeted IDF air bases, but this time, most of the missiles that they fired were aimed at civilian population centers. With that in mind, Israel has raised the alert level in the Galilee and along the northern border regions as the possibility looms of resumed rocket and missile attacks from Hezbollah in Lebanon. But so far, that doesn't seem to be happening. Now, with all that in mind, prepare yourselves for a deep dive into all the details about America's strategic strikes on Iran's renegade nuclear program. And the Iranians threatened together that any American civilian or military personnel in the region is now a legitimate target. And President Donald Trump responded to this with his own threats, saying any retaliation will be met with far greater force than we've seen. And meanwhile, Lebanon's prime minister sent a very sensible message to Hezbollah saying it is important that we avoid involvement in this conflict. With that in mind, the IDF considers the overnight American attacks in Iran as very significant, but notes that a great deal of analysis and assessment work remains to be done before final results can be announced. The military emphasizes that the American strike was fully coordinated with Israel, but without direct operational cooperation. Immediately afterwards, the Israeli Air Force also attacked, and this is according to the prearranged plan. The IDF says that the Israeli strikes disrupted Iran's firing and coordination capabilities, aiming to damage its response mechanism. They also note that since the United States entered combat, significant changes in Iranian behavior are evident and additional targets are expected to be attacked later. Now, I want to do two things at this point. First, I want to ask you to help us spread the truth by sharing this video. In this context, it's important to know that Israel and the United States coordinated before the attack on Fordo, and several hours earlier, President Donald Trump updated Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu about the decision that was made, and senior Israeli officials were confident in recent days that Trump would ultimately join, but at the same time prepared to handle Fordo themselves if he revised his decision. In fact, Israel's war cabinet convened overnight between Saturday and Sunday to monitor the progress of the American attack and prepare for the Israeli strikes, which were scheduled to follow. Once again, an appeal is being made to what's left of the Ayatollah regime to realize that they can no longer win this war, and the time has come to surrender and save the people of Iran from further suffering and bloodshed. President Trump declared that they need to make peace now, adding they must stop immediately, otherwise they will be attacked again. And according to a CNN report, Trump hopes that the strikes in Iran will initiate a diplomatic process and for now does not plan further attacks. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu issued a separate statement that President Trump and I often say, peace through strength. First strength, then peace. And tonight, President Trump and the United States acted with full strength. Your bold decision to strike Iran's nuclear facilities with America's enormous power will change history. In Operation Rising Lion, Israel truly did amazing things. Tonight's action was unprecedented. That most of the enriched uranium at the nuclear facility in Fordo was moved to a secret location before the American attack. A senior Iranian official said as much to Reuters in a report published this morning. The report also said that the number of workers at the site had been reduced to a minimum. Satellite images of the Fordo nuclear site from June 19 to June 20 show more than 15 trucks at the entrance to the site. It's possible that these trucks were used to transfer nuclear assets and equipment from that location. Israel's intelligence echelon believes that the stockpiles of enriched uranium was held at the facility in Isfahan, and it is still unclear whether the uranium was destroyed or merely buried under the rubble. In this context, it's worth taking a note of a statement by a senior Iranian official who, a Qatari media portal, stated that the Trump administration notified Iran before the attack, conveying a message that it is not interested in a total war. If that's true, then it might have given the Iranians time to move anything that they could move and didn't want to destroy at the Fordo facility. But we do not know yet what's going on, and we will keep reporting you on everything that's happening here in this